We want to make sure that we thank all of our presenting sponsors. Without you, we would not have this dialogue as we do every day. And we are coming up on our 200th episode. You'll be hearing more and more about that. We're going to be having a special episode, which is kind of, if you will, a birthday party. It'll be kind of fun. I don't know where 200 episodes has gone, to tell you the truth. I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, and Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd, is not with us today as she is moderating a panel, I believe. We have today with us from the Theitas Group, we have Jeff Schreifels and Richard Perry. And gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Nonprofit Show.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited. So Jeff and Richard, you've got this book that you've just put out. It's not just about the donor, which is a really interesting title, but this is your second book and it follows up your first book. And the title of that was just as interesting.
That's right.
What was the title of the first book?
It's not just about the money.
About the money.
Yeah.
Which is like a mind blower for so many of us.
Well, that's because people think that fundraising is about the money when it actually isn't at all about the money. The money is the result. It's really not the objective. So that's why we wrote the book, but you got to get into it in order to figure that all out.
I love it. Well, I think for my money and reading this book, and I'll confess I hadn't read your first book, but, I think you're really talking about some systemic issues, which we'll get into today with what you're talking about. But if you can understand what some of these values and directions are, ultimately you're going to be more successful and more sustainable. And so that's what I really liked about this book, is that it takes it away from like the fear-based, I got to get out there and get as much money, to really about what the relationships are and the driving factors. So let's go ahead and really get onto this, because I am fascinated. First of all, I want you to talk to us about the Theitas Group and how long you've been working together and how you formed the thesis of your book.
Wow.
Jeff, go ahead.
Why don't you do that, Jeff?
Okay. Well, Theitas, the real story behind it really started back in the mid-90s with Richard, who owned a direct response fundraising agency out of Seattle called Domain Group. So direct response, all the direct mail, television, radio, print ads, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And we had a number of clients who were very successful in the direct response, some major nonprofit clients all over the country. Mm-hmm. But Richard started seeing that a lot of those organizations were doing very poorly with major gifts. Mm-hmm. And Richard, having a background as a development director in his previous life and doing major gifts, knew that they weren't doing it right. And so he really developed his philosophy and thoughts around major gifts using the discipline of direct response fundraising, meaning being very data focused. So what does the data say about these donors and how does it drive your strategy? And then also more about planning and execution and being, having a structure and being very disciplined, having goals. All of those things came from our experience of direct response. So he applied it to major gifts for a few clients that took him up on, hey, let me help you with your major gifts. And they saw incredible results because of it. And so out of that was really the nuggets, the born of where Theitas was. Mm-hmm. And, several years later, they sold that agency. Richard went out on his own to form his own consultancy using those philosophies and those things that were so successful. And then we always, we worked together back from the mid-90s, and we really enjoyed just hanging out with each other besides working with each other. And we always said, hey, if we get an opportunity, we want to work together. And so that opportunity came in 2009 when we rebranded his consultancy into Theitas Group, working exclusively with nonprofits to help them build and manage major gift programs. Put a structure to it and then manage the people, come alongside of the major gift officer or frontline fundraiser to make sure that they were successful. Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing that since 2009 and we've expanded our offering to mid-level and plan giving. And then we've also created the Theitas Group Academy, which trains major gift officers, mid-level officers all over the world. So we do consulting and we do the training for all of that.
Okay, well then we've got to go to the master himself, and we're going to start with the tough question, Richard. And that is, what the heck is a major gift?
Well, it depends on what organization, what the size of the organization is, and the size of the donor file. But a major gift is the amount an amount of money that is above the kind of average gift of a long-term donors on the file. So, for instance, if you have say 5,000 or 2,000 donors on a file that on average give $1,000 cum a year, something above that might be a major gift.
Okay.
It's a little bit of an art in terms of figuring that out, but that's how we would generally approach what a major gift is.
Interesting.
It's funny. Some people say, well, a major gift's like 6 or 7 figure gifts. Well, of course
Right.
it is.
Yeah.
But it could be like a $60,000 gift for a very small organization,
Mhm.
or it could be a $600,000 gift for a medium organization. So it depends on the size of the organization and the size of the file and the average gift size of the organization's file.
So I love that you defined it that way, because I find that we hog tie ourselves. You can tell I'm from the West. I just said actually hog tie. We define ourselves with these major parameters, and then Miss Betty's Bunny Rescue is comparing herself to the American Cancer Society, right?
Yeah.
And so then everybody's out of whack.
Yep.
Because we don't come down to where we are at this place in time,
Yeah.
the life cycle of our nonprofit, the history of our organization. So I
mean,
love that you said that.
Well,
The
here's
truth
the
is-
interesting thing too about that, and Jeff can expound on this, but it's like in what we've discovered in like many universities, they say, well, okay, the major gift is 25,000. Then they have this just a ton of donors below that level that they don't talk to the way they talk to the major gift people. And what we've discovered in analyzing those files is there are so many high potential givers below that 25,000 criteria. So they're missing out on a bunch of revenue.
Yeah.
So there's that whole business that's going on too.
Yeah. I mean, I think the truth is that every nonprofit has a major donor or major
they do.
donors.
Mhm.
That person could be giving $250. That could be a major gift for some small little organization.
Right.
Or it could be $100,000. So
Right.
there's no excuse for any nonprofit not to have a major gift program. That's what we believe.
Love it. I love that. I think that's fabulous. Well, to get to that point, let's talk about leadership, because this is an issue of leadership. I can imagine, folks sitting around the table saying, "Oh yeah, we're not there yet." Or when they come, that's just a gift from the sky that falls in our lap, but that's not our reality. So how do we work on a leadership level so that we set those expectations, we benchmark them, and then we can work towards them? So
Well, part of the whole thing is basically getting leaders and managers, and we do a lot of work in this area, getting them to understand how major gifts works.
okay.
And it's often misunderstood. Like somebody will come to us and say, well, we want to start a major gift program, but they haven't actually examined what the pipeline of donors is for their organization. How many are there coming in? Do they have a donor acquisition program? And so just understanding how that works is very, very important. And what role it plays in the organization.
Interesting. Hey, Jeff, do you think that major gift, a lot of times we will hear the word major gift officer, or major gift, department. Do you think that that's all they should be doing, that they should be so focused in on that? Or because it seems to me, I see groups that they're so siloed, and in some cases, they might not even be in the same office. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's tricky. So ultimately, yes, Richard and I would say, if you are a major gift officer, you should only be doing major gifts.
Okay.
because what happens more often than not, when you give them added responsibilities or things to do, they will gravitate towards those things and not take care of their donors that are in their portfolio. But we also recognize that there are some really small organizations that can't afford a full-time major gift officer, or they may not even have at least 150 donors of what we would say is a full-time caseload. They may only have 50 donors. Therefore, they're cultivating those 50 donors, but they also might be doing other things like plan giving, or sometimes you have the development director doing that job and doing the major gift job. So we recognize that, but the key is understanding how to focus your time correctly and then being disciplined enough to really cultivate the donors that you do have in your portfolio.
I love that. And I love that you brought up the word discipline, because one of the things that, I've really struck me in your book about your book, and that it seems like it's woven throughout, is that there's a cadence, there's a discipline part of it, but there's also, it's very structured in that you're looking at the data and you're taking some of the emotion out of it, but then you have a really interesting twist. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that, because one of the shocking things that you say, major gifts is a spiritual endeavor. In fact, you start that, I highlighted it. It's like in the first 30 pages, you launch into that. And so talk to me, what does that mean? And so I'm going to let you, Richard, go first.
Well, like I said earlier, fundraising, Jeff and I believe, and so does our team, that fundraising is not about money.
Mhm.
It's about a human being with certain passions and interests that wants to do good on the planet. And so therefore it is a thing that happens. It's more of a mystical, spiritual thing that happens with an individual as they express themselves in the planet to do good. And the way they express themselves is they take the money that they've earned, and what's the source of that money? It's the labor. So they've expended some labor, secured their money, passed the money off to the organization they're serving, and thereby transferred their persona. They've transferred their actual being to you to care for it, which is why it is so special and so meaningful. And in our minds, it's a spiritual activity.
Wow. So when I hear you phrase it that way, my first reaction is, this is why stewardship and donor retention is so critical, because it really, you need to understand what that donor wants or is getting, or their journey to doing that. It's really powerful.
So a donor is giving away, as Richard said, part of that value, that hard-earned labor. They're giving it to you, and they're trying to make something great happen in the world. In the process of that, they're finding joy. And you, as the frontline fundraiser, that person that's the bridge between that donor and the need, you're coming together. You're that person that is stewarding their joy throughout that process. And so, yeah, you're right. That stewardship is so important, because they've given so much to have you do something with it. And it's our responsibility to tell them what a gift it was and what an impact it did make. So,
when you say that, I'm struck with the concept of, working with somebody of immense resources and talking about numbers that most people, on our side of the table, on the nonprofit side of the table, can never envision. They can never understand what this is like to manage, to earn, to what all these things that come about. And I think that puts us at a really weird place, because we're trying to deal with people in a way that might just seem so intimidating, if you will. And I'd love it if you could talk about that just a little bit, like how major gift officers get themselves to a place where they can understand that donor.
Well, I mean, Julia, the thing there is that we basically try to get a major gift officer to think about this person not in terms of their wealth or their power, but in terms of them as a human being.
Mhm.
And so the only difference between this person that has all the wealth and power
Mhm.
and the person that doesn't is the wealth and the power.
Mhm.
And we've met many of those kinds of people who are basically good, kind, generous people who just happen to have more. And so, and they think the same way. So whether you're giving $10 or 10 million or 10 billion, you find in talking to these folks that they are exactly the same as everybody else,
Right.
and that they want to do good, that
Yeah.
they have passions and interests, and they want to see the planet be better and people be better and people restored to a place of the potential that they should have.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So along those same lines, then I'm really interested to ask the two of you what we get wrong about donors. You know, to follow down that path, we make these judgments. We have our own biases. You know, we have going even further our own prejudices. Um, so why do we get it wrong, and what are we getting wrong? Jeff, why don't you start us with that?
I think one would be that we often think that donors don't have specific interests.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're I listen to development directors and some major gift officers who say, well, they just give because they love us.
Well,
And
no, I've heard that.
they don't really have any specific interest in
Yeah.
exactly what we're doing.
Mhm.
And we don't believe that. We believe that if you really got to know the donor, you'd understand they do have specific interests and passions. And the whole idea around major gifts, if you really want a transformational gift, is taking those passion and interests and matching them up with all the programs and projects your organization has. And too few major gift officers and major gift leaders and nonprofit leaders do that. They just, well, they should just love what we do overall. And
Yeah.
donors have specific interests. And
Mhm.
our job is to figure that out,
Mhm.
get them to tell us what that is.
And so, Richard, when you have that process and you're stewarding along a donor, and I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, by the time you get somebody into a major donor portfolio, the organization should know their donor, right?
Right. They
I
should.
mean, hopefully that this has, been the process, unless it's just that whole fabulous thing of, the check fell from the sky. But how do you get to that discussion? I mean, how is it cultivated? It's not probably just a one-time thing. Or do you find that donors are like, yeah, these are the three things that I want to work on? Or do they need to be led to help discover that?
Yeah, they need to be led, Julia.
Okay,
And this is the thing. So
interesting.
and this is the thing that goes wrong often is that you have a major gift officer who thinks the things about the money. And so they're after the money. And so therefore the first discussion is about the money.
Right.
And what we're basically saying is do not start there with the money. Do not start with the money. Start with instead. So Julia, what is it that you want to accomplish on the world through your giving? And then you'll come out with something general. And then, well, can you expand on that? Now, why is that important to you? And you dig down. We have a whole system for helping the major gift officer figure that out. And then once you figured that out, then it's serving that interest or passion with the donor that then leads to the money. That's how it works. It's way more successful than just sitting down and basically reaching into Julia's purse and grabbing the money. You can't be doing that, which is what most people do, which is why these donors go away.
Yeah.
You know, um, I'm thinking about in my own community, and when I, as a board member, have been tasked with relationship building or going on asks, a lot of times we chase the money. And have been in environments where it's like, oh, this donor, they really love kids, even though we don't serve kids. If we pitch them a playground, they'll probably fund that. And
Oh,
so
I
then we
know.
chase
Yeah.
this like money, and it's just so disheartening. And I think that's a leadership issue, because obviously that's coming down. But could you talk about that a little bit? Maybe Jeff, expand on, because I think that's another thing we get wrong about donors.
Yeah, we get that often wrong. So that's the whole idea of, if we really know the donor and we really care about that donor, we're going to bring them things that they're passionate about.
Right, that'll work.
The other thing that it reminds me of is there are a lot of development leaders and CEOs of nonprofits who are telling their MGOs to go out and chase wealthy people in their community who
Yeah.
aren't donors.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we know this person's got a lot of money. Go out there. I bet, I just tell them that, I know them. So just go out and, strike up a relationship with the person.
Mhm.
Therefore, taking your gaze off your current portfolio, the donors that have already raised their hand and said, hey, I love you, you're going to say, no, I'm going to go chase this person at the Rotary Club.
It's
or,
crazy.
or
Totally
where else
crazy.
down. And this happens all the time. Chase the wealthy, chase the money, go after the money. It will not work.
Right, right. And why do you think that we don't understand that? I mean, I'm fascinated by that. I think it's just, is it because we don't, to your point, when we started this discussion, we don't look at the data, or it's just human nature, or we think it's easy money? Why is that?
Here's one big reason, and Richard, you can expound on this, but I think one big reason is that we want the quick fix.
Yeah.
And we think we're going to go after the money, we'll get a big chunk of money. And this major gift work is a long game. Building relationships is not something that happens overnight. And that is frustrating for a lot of leaders.
I also think, Julie, it's because leaders and managers, people that have that philosophy or work that way, are confused about what major gifts is. And if they understood it wasn't about the money, then they would actually turn their gaze towards the donors that they have, who have already raised their hands and basically said, hey, I'm with you. I love what you do. The thing that's in your heart is in my heart. Let's do this together. And then it really actually works. But if you're focused on the money, then of course, what's going to grab your gaze is, well, there's that person that has the money. And oh, by the way, there's one that has the money. And you make it all about the money, then the like interests thing, which is what's really important.
Yeah, you're chasing the shiny object, literally.
Right.
So it's hard to believe, but our time is almost up. And I didn't want to leave without asking the two of you sage gentlemen, what does the future look like? Because so often major gifts, we have done our relationship work with social events, whether they be large events, medium or small events, intimate lunches, dinners, gatherings. That has really changed. And what are you seeing going forward? Anything that might give us some new ideas?
Well, I definitely think that if you're a nonprofit, the future is major gifts.
Yes,
more developing relationships one-on-one with donors. I think events and those kind of things are going to go away. I mean, there will always be a place for them, but it's going to be more about developing those one-on-one relationships. And we've seen it in the midst of this pandemic. So many people are contacting us saying, we finally need to start a major gift program, or we finally need to get our act together. We need help because these events all went away. These relationships are not strong, and we've got to start building relationships. And I really think, and Richard and I know we've been talking about this a lot, is that major gifts is the future.
It really is. I mean, when you look at events, they are actually not net revenue producers,
right?
Like major gifts is. So we know that. And then major gifts and planned giving are the net revenue producers. Mm-hmm. The other factor that's happening is right now during these times, the greatest transfer of wealth is occurring. Mm-hmm. $68 trillion dollars is moving from the baby boomer generation or the next generation. And a lot of this money is sitting in retirement accounts.
Mhm.
And there's going to be a whole bunch of people that want to do good with that money. And how's it going to happen? When we discover amidst all these people that have that money, that in fact, here's the thing that you want to do with some of this money to do good on the planet. Come work with us and let's do that together. So that's another reason.
Yeah.
I love it. I think you're spot on. And I think that it's one of those things that it's such a changing opportunity. It's a changing time, but it's really an opportunity. You've got one quick question I want to get into. Solomon writes, philanthropy is under a lot of scrutiny these days. What can we do to encourage and incentivize major donors to take initiative and not always wait to be asked and approached by nonprofits? Interesting question.
Hmm.
You know, I think it's about communicating what it is you're doing. I think we think that our community knows how we serve our community,
No, they
but
don't.
that's not always the case.
No, they
And
don't.
so for my money, Solomon, you know, I'm big into, you know, telling your story, sharing your activity, communicating with so many constituencies about what it is you're doing and how you're making inroads and where you need help.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a great course on the Academy called the Golden Leadership List. And it's all about how you can communicate with a lot of different types of people to share what it is that you're doing. Because then maybe you make a connection there that allows you to start that conversation.
I do want to add, though, at the very end here is that donors do want to be asked.
Yes.
And so don't forget that. It's not like, oh, let's just do everything nice and we'll just wait for a donor to just out of their kindness just give to us.
Right.
They want to be asked. They want that. They need to. And so let's not be afraid to do that.
Yeah. You don't ask if you don't get. Well, hey, it's hard to believe that our time is up. Again, I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Jarrett Ransom, my co-host, will be back tomorrow. You got to get this book. I found it had a lot of really practical things. It had some reminders of things that I thought I knew or that I needed to be reframed. I think that it's the toolbox for going forward. And I also feel, and I don't know, gentlemen, it almost seems like we've put major gifts on the back burner because of the pandemic in some ways, and that we've had this sense, oh, we can only ask for smaller amounts. And so I'm thrilled, Richard, that you brought up this enormous transference of wealth, because we talk a lot about that on the Nonprofit Show. So what a pleasure it has been to have Jeff Schreifels on and Richard Perry. You two have really made a difference in our sector, and we can't wait to talk with you more.
Thanks, Julia. It was great being with you.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, it's been great. Again, it's not just about the donor, the ultimate management guide to major gift success. You can find that on Amazon, or you can go to the Theitas Group and link directly, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, you guys are great. We want to thank our presenting sponsors. Without you, we would not have this amazing discussion as we do every day. This has been another episode of the Nonprofit Show. As we like to end every day, we remind everybody, stay well so you can do well. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll see you again.